and we are extremely delighted to have many, many wonderful people in the audience joining us today. The event, of course, is very, very close to our hearts. The Department of English is celebrating the eve of Keki N Daruwalla's 85th birthday, as also the event, of course, is very, 51 very close to our hearts and more of his first book under Orion. We are very grateful that Keki Daruwalla has consented to be with us today, and we are more than honored to have him in conversation with another literary stalwart, Sanjukta Dasgupta. So I would like our head of department, Professor Yahya Ibrahim, to kindly welcome our guests before I introduce the speakers and leave the stage to them. Yes, sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bashu. So it was a delight finally to see sir here. And since we have lost so much time, so without much delay, I should begin. Respected dignitaries, colleagues, and dear students, it's a very cherishing occasion when we all are assembled here online on the eve of Keki N Daruwalla sir's 85th birthday. So certainly it is a very cherishing and a very memorizing experience, or a memorable experience for us. We are here to mark the 51 years of his first poetry collection also. I, on behalf of the Department of English, Karim City College, and also on behalf of the management of our college, welcome the grand man of Indian English literature, as stalwart of poetry and fiction, Keki N Daruwalla, sir. Heartiest welcome to you, sir. You are with us for the second time. The memories of our first event are still fresh. Together with the cherishing moments of today, these experiences will become epochal for our English department. Honorable Sanjukta Dasgupta ma'am, the noted poet and academician, is with us for the second time once again. We welcome her with the core of our heart and hope that her conversation with Keki sir today will become a remarkable discourse in Indian writings in English. We also welcome all other dignitaries, Anisur Rahman sir, Urna ma'am, Seema ma'am, and all dignitaries who have joined today. We also welcome our colleagues of Department of English and Karim City College. And we also extend our warmest blessings to our students who are here, and some of them are there on YouTube Live also. So heartiest and a very cherishing welcome to all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, yes, sir. And we are indeed very grateful and proud as a department to be hosting this very special conversation. And without much delay, I would like to introduce the two people in conversation who, of course, need no introduction. But since we have a number of, an entire fresh batch of students who are beginning their journey into English literature, so for them, I would like to introduce both our speakers. Keki N Daruwalla is one of India's foremost poets and writers. He was born in Lahore in 1937. His father, N.C. Daruwalla, being an eminent professor in the Government College, Lahore. His family left undivided India in 1945 and moved to Junagadh and then to Rampur in India. As a result, he grew up studying in various schools and in various languages. He obtained his master's degree in English literature from Government College, Ludhiana University of Punjab, and spent a year at Oxford as a Queen Elizabeth House Fellow in 1980-81. He joined the Indian Police Service in 1958 and retired as chairman of the Joint Intelligence Committee in 1995. He was also a special assistant to the Prime Minister on International Affairs in 1970-71 and was subsequently in the Cabinet Secretariat until his retirement. His first book of poetry, Under Orion, was published by Writers' Workshop, India in 1970. He then went on to publish a second collection, Apparition, in April in 1971, for which he was given the Uttar Pradesh State Award in 1972. He won the Sahitya Akademi Award in 1984, though he later returned it in October 2015. His first novel, Pepper and Christ, was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Fiction Prize in 2010. He was awarded the Padma Shri in 2014, and his recent award includes the Tata Literature Festival Poet Laureate Award 2017. His work has been translated into a number of languages, and he stands, of course, as the doyen of Indian English poetry. Coming to our next important speaker for the day, Professor Sanjukta Dasgupta. Sanjukta Dasgupta is the convener, English Advisory Board, Sahitya Akademi, New Delhi, and also the president of the Executive Committee of the Intercultural Poetry and Performance Library at Kolkata. Professor, former head of Department of English, and former Dean, Faculty of Arts, Calcutta University, she has been the recipient of the Fulbright Postdoctoral Fellowship, the Fulbright Scholar in Residence Grant, the Australia-India Council Fellowship, and the Gender Study Fellowship Grant, University of British Columbia, among others. She has been invited to participate in conferences and to teach or lecture at universities in Asia, US, UK, Europe, Canada, and Australia. She was the chairperson of the Commonwealth Writers' Prize jury panel at Melbourne in 2003-04 and at Malta in 2004-05. The Indian Institute of Advanced Study Shimla invited her as visiting professor to deliver a series of talks on Tagore, Nation and Gender. She was granted the Charles Wallace Trust UK Translator Fellowship to work on her project on Tagore's daughters at the University of East Anglia, Norwich, UK. She was the co-principal investigator of the India-US Knowledge Initiative Program, working on women entrepreneurs engaged in eco-friendly business. And in this connection, she has visited several states in the USA in the 2016 and 17. In 2018, she taught in Poland as visiting professor at the Jagiellonian University. Her recent awards include the IWSFF Women Achievers Award, Kolkata in 2019, and the Kamala Das Poetry Award 2020. She's a poet, short story writer, critic, translator, with countless titles to her credit. She has published 7 collections of poems, her latest being Unbound, which is receiving wonderful reviews from across the globe. We are more than indebted that these two wonderful spirits have agreed to be in conversation with one another to bring out each other's bests, as also to illuminate upon this trajectory of Indian English poetry and to discuss the celebrated under Orion. Sanjukta ma'am and Keki sir, it's over to you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bashudara. That was a very generous introduction, and I feel very humbled because this is a moment of great honor for me to be here on this platform. And I would just like to say hello and Happy New Year, everyone. Hope this year will be better than the previous one. I thank the principal of Karim City College, Dr. Ibrahim, and my young poet friend and faculty member, Boshidhara Roy, for facilitating this wonderful opportunity of being in conversation with one of India's most dynamic poets, Keki Daruwalla, on his birthday eve. May I reiterate my observations made on this platform in 2020 that the poetry of Keki Daruwalla makes us reflect, makes us smile, and makes us feel inspired, and also instructs us about how to use the English language as a malleable tool of expression that can bond Bombay and Babylon without any tectonic fracture. Recently, some power politicians have emphasized that chronology is the core fact in any discourse. 23rd January is a special day in our nation's calendar. It marks the birth anniversary of our charismatic and radical freedom fighter, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. In fact, 23rd January 2022 marks the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji. The poet Rabindranath Tagore represented Netaji as a youthful ambassador of freedom, equality, and unrelenting willpower in his play, The Land of Cards, Tasher Desh. Freedom, equality, unrelenting willpower are the essential attributes of poets who fit the Shelleyan definition of being the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Such poets are freedom fighters who dream about an inclusive world and are determined to remain non-conformists. poet Keki Daruwalla is a life member of this stellar, timeless Poets Club. Poet Keki Daruwalla, who is here with us on the eve of his birthday, it's not only about celebrating his birthday, which really is tomorrow, but for poets, readers, and writers of poetry, the significance of chronology is about milestones and signposts of a creative journey. So as we celebrate Keki's 85th birthday without any cakes, the irony of virtual platforms, we are simultaneously delighted to celebrate the 51st birth anniversary of Keki's first book of poems, Under Orion, first published in 1970. When Keki Daruwalla wrote the poems included in this debut collection, I'm presuming he wrote his poems on paper sheets, hard copies, as the millennial kids call them now, as the personal computer had just emerged in 1970 as a newborn child from the womb of a super game-changing technology. As we celebrate the 51st year of publication of Keki's first book, Under Orion, there can be no hesitation in stating that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Or else, how could a young poet in his debut collection write, and I quote, if we had plague, Camus style, and doctors searched for the virus, there would be black market in rats. This is from Collage 1. Let us give Keki Daruwalla a big hand. If you can just switch on your audios, maybe Keki can hear that.
Thank you very much.
Now the platform is all yours, dear poet. May I suggest that you read a poem of your choice from Under Orion, and then also tell us a bit about how you decided that you were going to emerge as a poet who had been with the Raw, who had been advising the Prime Minister of India at one time, and then suddenly you switched to poetry. So if you could just tell us a bit about that, and of course the first book, you had stated when it was republished in 1991 that a first book, like a first love, remains a favorite. Over to Keki Daruwalla, our favorite Keki.
Thank you very much, Sanjukta Dasgupta. Thanks to Professor Yahya Ibrahim and the staff of the school, the college. And I'm very grateful for whatever Basudhara Roy has managed to put up with the help of all her colleagues, her elders, and her well-wishers. Thank you very much, Basudhara. I had come from the hills. I'd worked 5 years in the hills from 1963 to 68 and been posted as SP Barabanki. Barabanki is 18 miles from Lucknow. In those days, we used to talk about miles, and I don't remember the kilometers. And it was a it was a criminal district and a small district with, we had a mortuary in the police lines. I mean, I can't imagine. And the atmosphere was a little damp and to me depressing because I came in the summers and my dog died. I had a very fine white Alsatian and it died. It was bitten by a snake. And three of my poems had been published in the Illustrated Weekly. One was on Martin Luther King, and one was Charvak, the Lokayata philosopher, killed by, well, you'll have to go back to Ramayana and Mahabharata for all that. So, and I got a letter from Professor P. Lal, who was our senior from Calcutta, and he was publishing, the head publisher of the Writers' Workshop, and he asked me for a book. And of course, I started writing. And whatever came in front of my eyes, I jotted them down and wrote a poem on it. So the poems in the Under Orion are like screenshots, not much time to meditate on what has passed. And still, as the book progressed, a book is a rites of passage, isn't it, way? And I managed to write these two long poems, the Under Orion and the Dialogues with the Third Voice. And Dialogues with the Third Voice was my dialogue with myself, with poetry, with what I intended to do, etc. Though even those days I had it in mind to write fiction. Fiction was a side. It was not a side business. It was an important part of my creative endeavor, if I may say so. And there we were. We had a small daughter, 3 years old or 2 years old, and my wife and me. And if you want me to read a poem, I'll read
Yes.
first poem, Easy and Difficult Animals. My wife was trying to teach my daughter about dreams, birds, animals, etc. And here they are. You have no problems such as mine. You do not cower from your own thoughts. It doesn't frighten you, the iron edge awaking from its rust, the crawl of oxidized dreams in lonely hours. Where do you get your insights from and your simple words? Teaching the daughter that day you said, some dreams are animals, some dreams are birds. The moon face was either turned towards light or away from it. Dark fruit, incandescent fruit. Your distinctions were a knife that went cutting to the root. You divided into you divided into the animal delirium that we call life into easy animals and difficult animals. All that moved on legs, all that moved on legs, flew on wings, crawled on the belly, inhaled through fins, hedgehog and weasel and polecat, all that went to the taxidermist, marmot and buzzard and bat, you pitched against, you lumped together as easy animals, and pitched against this menagerie, one solitary cry, the one difficult animal, that was I.
Brilliant.
The favorite poem, and long after, I mean, for years and years, I would start a poetry reading with this particular poem. But when I look at the contents, I'm a little surprised at myself. There's epileptic, there is famine, and there is a riot scene which I had. Which had the misfortune to quell. And my father was dying at that moment, and in Meerut, and I was in Hapur, quelling this particular disturbance. It was quite a disturbance. And then I, poetry is half of it recall, and with me, memory and poetry go together. Memory plays a very big part in my writing, and I recalled all that 7, 8 years later in other books as well. I'd like to read the one on famine. It's
Yes.
not actually, it's a pestilence.
Mm.
I'll read.
Yes.
Pairs of padded feet behind me, astride me, in front of me. The footpaths are black feet converging on the town. Something blocks my face here all the time. Yes. Pairs of padded feet behind me, astride me, in front of me. The footpaths are black feet converging on the town. Brown shoulders, black shoulders, shoulders round as orbs, muscles smooth as river stones, glisten till a dry wind scourges the sweat from off their backs. They are palanquins, bearers. They are palanquin bearers of a different sort. On the string bed they carry no henna smeared brides. Prone upon them are frail bodies, frozen bodies, delirious bodies, some drained of fever and sap, some moving, others supine, transfixed under the sun. The hospital floors are marble white, black bodies dirty them. Nurses in white habits, UNICEF jeeps with white bonnets, doctors with white faces face them. Who says they have cholera? They are down with diarrhea. Who says it is cholera? It is gastroenteritis. Minimization was being carried on all over the state. The land's visage is unmarked, suit brown, suit green, suit gray. Mongrels tail the ambulance till dust and gasoline fumes choke them off. But memory, like a crane arm, unloads its plowed up rubble. Ancient visitations is what one recalls. Ancient visitations is what one recalls. The sweep of black feet towards the ghats, dying villages, the land surplus once again, as after a flood, migrations as only birds have known, forgotten cattle dying at the stakes, someone left them on tether. This is miniature by contrast, but the image lingers. String beds creaking over padded feet, and when of a sudden cholera turns to death, the feet keep up their padded progress. Only the string bed is exchanged for a plank. So these were the types of poems. I don't know why I wrote in the very first book I came across. And I hope the following volumes were more, shall I say, amenable, more optimistic, more used to merriment than the first. And there was a previous volume. The second volume was written between 1964 and 68. And so the two volumes gave me a bad name. I still remember our ambassador to Sri Lanka. We were discussing things, and he said, "How many people read you? You are such a dismal poet." I don't know whether that goes through. I would like to read another poem.
Yes, please.
I no. Yes. May I?
Yes, of course. Yes,
Sanjukta, I'll
it's absolutely
from
fascinating.
another book. 150. I remember the page. Sorry. Sorry for taking your time.
No, it's perfectly all right. Yeah.
250. The foal. It's on the birth of a foal. I mean, we all know what a foal is. And here it is, the poem. Always, when the foal is born, night is over, it is dawn. Here the nights are grey and young. I was in Kashmir, incidentally, and I wrote this in the winter about a foal being born. I have poems on birth. I also have poems on death. Always when the foal is born, night is over, it is dawn. Here the night is grey and young. The stars crawl upwards, rung on rung. The first cold feet of splintered glass, the first cold feel of splintered glass, the thaw condensing on the grass. In store for them is freezing cold for Mother Mare and coming foal. A bed of straw is snugly laid, sheaf on sheaf and blade on blade. The farmhand sees through creaking door. Her hooves turn restless on the floor. She circles round but doesn't groan, a restless stammer on the stone. Then she lies down on the straw. The foal has started moving now. Soon a bag, toy horse, and blood lie gently heaving in the mud. Four thin twig-like legs appear to sign the end of this dark year. For quite some time, the legs don't kick. The foal awaits the mother's lick. Where's the dark and where's the cold? The mother's steam breath warms the foal. Slowly the eyes are licked quite clean, and sight appears through web screen. Always, when the foal is born, night is over, it is dawn. Well, the poems I wanted to read, I did, and I'm open to questions from.
Absolutely fascinating. And I'm spellbound, really, to
Mesmerized.
in terms of even forming my first reactions. And as you you virtually informed us that the first book was about more angst and some anguish, and then how you mellowed into sounding that positive way in which one can just go through the gloom and the darkness and that sense of doom, which is so much present in the first book, the one which we are talking about today. In case those who haven't seen this first book, of course, I have the 1991 volume of the one which probably Writers Workshop published must have been the sari cover. Yes. So, of course, we don't have that feminized volume with us, but Vashidhara was very, very quick in sounding like almost a teacher and saying, "You don't have that book? I'm going to send it." And she said, "And I'm going to send it today. So please sit down and start reading." And so, yes, and it has been an enriching experience, learning from the book, learning the confidence of a poet who is going to publish poems for the first time in a particular volume, from the writer's workshop with P. Lal there as the sort of Mount Everest, who in his home in Lake Gardens would sit back and look at your poetry, because my first book of poems also was published by the writer's workshop much later. It was called Snapshots. And so I was too overwhelmed at that time, but I'm sure P. Lal himself offered to publish Keki Daruwalla, and of course it couldn't have been any different, because this is the voice of, in the first book, which we are celebrating today, the 51st birth anniversary. It is the voice of a poet who is confident, not only about the content about which he's writing, but the use of the language. Especially those of us who write in English have to be very sensitive about the fact that we are really writing in English and not translating from any of the regional languages which we use. And so it has to resonate as an English poem. And precisely this quality is what Keki Daruwalla's, all his poems seem to resonate with the English language itself, not the Brits' English, of course, but the English which is ours, the English which is which we have claimed, which we have internalized, and which we have also been able to change in various ways in our various font sizes. Yes. So we are absolutely delighted that we have Keki reading from his own poems today. And I would just ask him, because you see, the poems that we refer to are not as elusive as his later poems become. And from that, we understand that the encyclopedic knowledge of Keki, his interest in history, his interest in ancient literature, his interest in ancient cultures, all that resonates in his poetry. And therefore, I have a question for Keki, which I think students also who are beginning to write poetry would be interested in knowing from his responses. So I would ask Keki that your poetry spans geographies and cultures seamlessly. Do you think poets should read and research widely in order to create poems that can be temporal and timeless at the same time?
I would have different yardsticks for fiction and poetry. Fiction needs research very often because, if you're writing 4 or 5 or 6 novels, you have to research the place where you are putting the plot to, the characters there. Poetry, if you wait a little longer, it vanishes from the mind. And I feel that for poetry, much your own self comes out. Whatever you have learned, whatever you have felt, comes out in the poem. And there isn't much value for too much of study, because the fiber, the silk in the poem, the music in the poem may disappear with time. So I've had this experience. You write half a poem in the evening, and then you revert to it 2 days later because you had work all the time, and you can't write the poem. So one has to take this with a grain of salt. yes, a little, whatever is in you, whatever you have imbibed, will come out sometime or the other, or somewhere or the other in the poem. But you can't use it as a rule that you have to study more to write a better poem.
So that is a big relief for all of us, knowing that. Yes? Who wants to study more if you can study less?
I know.
Yeah. And so, yes, in other words, it is about being a critically informed poet, and the unconscious of the poet, which joins in with the sort of expression, the subjectivity of the poet's ideological inclinations, you could say, because I wouldn't think in terms of branding a poet according to a particular ideology. But then there are certain universal ideologies, which is something that you cannot debate on. So it is not about supporting a particular group or a particular party, but it is supporting one's sense of values, sense of ethics, sense of history, sense of truth, and one's repugnance towards what is fake, what is unreliable, what is unethical, what is unscrupulous, and all that resonates in the poetry of Keki Daruwalla. It is not often that we meet this sort of poetry in terms of all the iconic poets that we refer to who have been writing in India. But in terms of Keki Daruwalla's poetry, I suppose this sort of wonderful balance between the aesthetic, the temporal, the timeless, all blended together, sometimes with sparkling wit, wonderful sense of humor, that little twist in the tail, as you would say, though you love fiction, of course, but at the same time, that twist in the last line of a poem or the middle of a poem is absolutely fascinating. And humor will not come to any poet in a particular language unless you have a complete grasp of that language, irrespective of whichever language you are handling. Humor in poetry can only happen when the language has been totally internalized and becomes a part of your own. And therefore, I will go on to ask Keki another curiosity of mine, I should say, and I'm sure this is shared by most others who are present here, that there are cliched statements that poetry makes nothing happen, but this has never discouraged poets. What are your views about the evolution of Indian English poetry? I'm not talking about the history of Indian English poetry and going back to Toru Dutt and Sarojini Naidu, but in terms of what has been happening recently, would you like to comment, since you began writing since 1970 perhaps, and what you see nowadays?
I think there are two questions in that
Yeah.
one particular query that
Yeah.
you've made. Firstly, secondly, is the standard of English poetry today. And
Yes.
I think it's very, very good. And there are some very, very fine writers. I don't wish to uh, mention the names, but Arundhati Subramaniam, Ranjit Haskote, C.P. Surendran, Ajit Thail. They are at the forefront, and there are so many others. And you read any anthology, some very, very fine anthologies have come out, and I find every poem a very fine poem. So the standards in 1970 and 90 and earlier were pretty bad. We had 16, 15, 10. I mean, Parthasarthi's 10 poets, 20th century poets.
Yes.
I think that has gone into 21 editions already, if not into 30 editions. So we had 15, 20 poets and no more. Now you have in hundreds. There are more than 100 really good poets, printable, publishable, and publishable not only in India but abroad. So I think the standard of English poetry and possibly poetry in our regional languages, our Indian languages, I don't know why we call them regional languages all the time. We should call them Indian languages. They are doing also very well. Some, for example, Urdu is dwindling because there isn't enough encouragement because of a right-wing sweep across the electoral rolls. The Urdu has been stymied, if I may use an American expression. But there have been I mean the rise of Hindi. Hindi is a very, very fine language, a very fine literature, both in fiction and in poetry. But the fact remains that the encouragement, Hindi is also coming up against a wall once it crosses Godavari and the Narbada and tries to go south. I don't want to get into politics. I wanted to say one thing about this first book. I suppose it can refer to many poets that the seeds of all that they are going to write come in the very first book. There is myth in a lot of myth.
Yes. Your poems on Shiva.
Sorry. Then there is a hark back to the past. There is talk about poetry, how we write it, about tragedy, and all the problems that confront a recent poet, and the sweep, if not the sweep, the career, the road goes through all those problems which one came across when one was writing his first book. And I wrote it in about 13 of, let's say 18 months. And there was a, once my wife and I were walking and there was a epileptic fit, a rickshaw puller, the husband and the wife and the kids, and she suddenly got an epileptic fit. That is where I studied a book about Petit Mal and psychomotor epilepsy. as I wrote the poem. So study also comes in when one is writing poetry. I'm sorry.
Would you like to have a glass of water? Is there some water nearby?
Yes, there is. Yes, please go ahead.
So, as you referred to myths and epics, and I was just wondering, your Shiva poems in your first book, would you be very confident about reading them now?
Which ones?
The Shiva poem, say the one which starts with Lord of the Stalactite. I have seen icicles growing from your tonsure.
Sorry, I didn't. Which poems are you referring to?
No, I'm talking under Orion. This is in this particular volume that I'm looking at. This is on page 26, Shiva at Timar Sen.
Timar Sen, okay. Yeah. No. Timar Sen is I'll tell you what it is. Timar Sen is a favorite is very high. What is it? 26.
Yeah.
Yes. Shiva at Timmersen and Shiva at Ludeshwar. So, can I read the poem?
Yes, please. I'm
Okay.
sure it's fascinating.
Lord,
Really.
Lord of the Stalactite. I mean, I'm referring to Shiva.
Yes, of course.
And it is at 12,000 feet
Mm.
at Timmersen. I've been there 3 or 4 times. Lord of the I was posted in Joshimath. So 3 years in Joshimath and 2 years in Ranikhet. That was the lovely time in the hills that we had. I also get married during those years. 65, 63 to 66, I was in the hills. Lord of the Stalactite, I've seen icicles growing from your tonsure. Overhead, a pair of monals kept vigil over the crags. I have a long poem on the monal. Around your austerity, the grey of nicotine hills, a landscape of slate where thought turns hermit, only the sky a vibration upon due vibration. The crags here are rock temples of some abandoned cult that brood over strips of alp and upland pasture, limb and shoulder of rock rearing from frozen landslides. Perhaps I overreach, but the thrust of lava that formed them was yours, some side flicker from the divine orgasm of the Tandava. Exiles, solitaries, these were your pilgrims, and Bhotia women crisped from their ice baths in Dholi Ganga, as they brought you oleander flowers and leaves of eagle marmelos, as they clutched the iron phallus of your bell and sent it clanging against a hemmed in universe, the sound cleaving like a sword edge through the hills. Here in these mountain wastes, where silence is crystal, where concentrics in the lake appear at only the shadow of a wheeling kite. Lord of the stalactite, of the third eye, and the rhymed beard, will you leave these heights where calcified columns rise and descend in rectilinear thrusts? Will you wear a raffia wig and let them tame you, domesticate you, and pat your ice cone sharpness into a rounded lingam? And then I came to Barabanki and paralyzed. There was another mutt at Todeshwar, and the yogi in charge was paralyzed, and notes were being flung and left by the by the pilgrims, and that was a bit of a climb down from the one I saw in Timmersen.
Oh, this was fascinating. And once again, that sort of blend of a bit of irony, humor.
Sanjukta ma'am, you have been muted somehow.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't do anything, but
It happens. It does happen. Yes, please
all
carry
right.
on.
So it's a fascinating poem. And again, as you must have noticed, that sort of blend of irony, humor, a sort of irreverence in the diction, which is really about claiming a spiritual icon as one's friend, as we found Tagore doing often. And probably Tagore imbibed that from
Sanjukta ma'am, you're getting muted again.
Oh, that's very bad.
Keki sir
Now,
also will be. Yes, yes, yes. It's
all
fine.
right, I will keep this darned cursor away from that
Yes.
area. So, yes, and so
I
I I personally think this is a brilliant poem, and of course, I asked Keki whether he would be very confident about reading this poem now, just about anyway. So, so, but
which was the one the
this
one
is
I've already read.
yeah,
Simar sir.
say Shiva and the last few lines of the poem, and also
There
so
was the Ghagra and Spate.
yeah, of
And
course.
that was a real spate. My wife and I, we went in a the trolleys which run on railway lines,
Mm.
and we sat in one, and we went to the to the township where the floods were on, and a lot of vegetables and cereals and were sent by government, and the entire scene of a flood in a rural area came through, and the story about the buffalo which swam into on the rooftop. I mean, the waters flung the buffalo on the rooftop, and she was milked for three days or 4 days, and there was no sustenance, not enough sustenance for her. All those stories came through, and some of them filtered into the poem. But for example, the Under Orion poem, when it goes into 6 or 7, I mean, if do we have time? Do we have time? I don't want.
Would you like to select a section from the poem and read, or
Sorry.
could you just read a section from Under Orion and
Yes.
also tell us how you have provided a note for lesser mortals like us?
Well, that was one of the troubles about writing poems is studying. I mean, the one of the first questions you asked. I studied the Orion myth, and actually, all that I wanted to talk about Orion was the drift. I mean, Orion is the one constellation uh, which I about which I had read in Henry Remarque, the
Yeah.
quiet on the Western Front,
Yeah. One of the
and
most disturbing novels.
I have I think I have quoted that. 1 minute, 1 minute. Yes, watching the night sky. This is the prose note. Watching the night sky has been a favorite pastime of mine because I was in the hills. Now you can't see the stars anymore, especially during a long sojourn in the hills. The fact that the constellation Orion moves so swiftly through the firmament first came to my notice through a passage in Eric Maria Remarque's novel Arc of Triumph. The passage reads, inverted commas start, as a boy I slept in a meadow one night. It was summer and the sky was very clear. Before I fell asleep, I saw Orion on the horizon standing above the woods. Then I woke up in the middle of the night, and suddenly Orion was standing high above me, right on top, you see. Then I woke up in the middle of the night, and suddenly Orion was standing high above me. I have never forgotten that. I had learned that the earth is a planet and rotates, but I had learned it as one learns something from books and does not quite realize. But now, for the first time, I felt that it really was like that. I felt that the earth was silently flying through the immensities of space. I've written other poems around that. I felt it so strongly that I almost believed I had to hold on to something in order not to be hurled off. He thought he would be, hurled off from the earth as it spins at a tremendous pace.
And would you like to read us, since this is the title poem, would you like
Yes.
to just read a
I,
short section?
I'll have, yes. Why not? Yes. I'll just read the end.
Okay.
You row through fog shapes. 1 minute. Can I have a minute? Sorry for that, because I have a phone here. You row through fog ships. I'm addressing Orion. You row through fog ships. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn sounds. I'm not addressing Orion. Sorry. In this, I have often used the term "you" when I'm talking about a person in the poem. You row through fog ships. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn sounds like a forgotten echo on the far edge of dream. The sea is choppy, the stomach turns upon itself, the boat bobs along like a drunk oil derrick. A swordfish breaks water, sending the spray exploding in your face. Brine and sweat, both tangy and warm to the lick, gleam along the rib of the taut muscle. The effort throws the ice within the heart. Yes, it is winter. We have seen in the late sky the sandlight of your splayed presence. Touch wind and water and wraiths into fluency. And through the chop and sway of water, the boat moves through the spray-ridden dark. Orion, you ran along a deeper nerve, spearing the temples and the hidden walls of the blue skull of the skies. What fog banks will we lurch against? What passions come to terms with? What sands will we hit? What stretch of dreams? What regions of the blood? We stalk the light. We trail the westward drift. Even though I distrust that delirium of light you move in. Orion, with you around, the heavens need an anchor, or someday you may run away with the skies. And
Brilliant.
the pitfalls of studying to write a poem comes out in this poem,
Yes.
because I wanted to write a poem on drift, and I studied the legend, and the poem is on the legend and not on drift. And very often I think that half a life of mine has also passed in adrift. But my, what shall I say? But my interest in the heavens and in the stars and planets. I'm ending with a poem which I'll put in my next, shall I say, volume.
Yes.
If not the last volume. The previously I had called the Babylon volume is the last one, and now possibly there will be another one in April. And
We didn't call them the last one, but it's a good marketing ploy. Then we can really go for it. And
okay, it's a short poem.
yeah.
What shall I say? An extra, what is ET, whatever it is, It came through four suns, solar systems, forces, and our sun tried to grab him, and this ET was sentient. This happened in 2017. Okay, I've got it from I haven't read this, but I'll just call it. And they gave it a Hawaii name because that is the observatory which found it. And the moment our sun tried to, with its gravity, tried to grab the ET, it turned. So it is sentient. It is 400 meters long, over 440 meters or something, and 40 meters broad. And it is sentient. It is like it has intelligence, and it escaped the sun's gravity. I've called it rover. And I wrote a long poem and cut it out, and just the first portion I'm going to put in the book. The intruder is here. It is a cigar, ET, asteroid, a torpedo from the unknown to another void. Skies mean nothing to Omuma. Omuma is the name they have given it. The observatory has given it. Skies mean nothing to Omuma. Navigator, skirting stars, has overspilled 4 sun systems. Traveler from afar. Time, distance, don't confuse him. He confounds the two. Doesn't know life from death. Who is who? The speed so close to light, when the sun's pentacled gravity reaches out for him, he dodges, shifts his mercurial trajectory, a fawn's swivel before the cheetah strike. A fawn's swivel before the cheetah strike. Loves to gamble like long-penned goat kids. Loves to gamble like long-penned goat kids. First day on the pasture. He delves into verse. 4-star clusters are quatrains for him. Aldebaran and Sirius are guzzles in themselves. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. And of course, we look forward to many more of your volumes. Do you have a name for this particular volume? Do you have a title for it already?
I have a very pompous title, and I'm quite afraid of it. Well, it's.
Would you like to share it with us?
Canto 10, not Lockdown. I forget the first name.
Oh.
On Canto 10, and it's from the Canto 10 of the Inferno.
Oh, okay.
During the virus, 2 years under the virus, I read the Inferno. So, I mean, you must put all disabilities to your advantage. And I have two good volumes. One is left by my father, Dorothy Sears, translation of the Inferno, and the recent one, a very fine one, which I prefer to Dorothy Sears also. And I use these, and it is a good. I wouldn't say it is a good. It is a attempt at takeoff from the Inferno, the Canto 10. And the Canto 10 talks about time stopping, because the Judgment Day is coming up between the 15th and the 16th centuries. And time will have to stop. And if time stops, the spheres moving all around will also have to stop. And there can be speculation on all that. And I have 3 or 4 sequence of poems on all that.
That will be fascinating for us to learn from, I'm sure, because as the first book makes us aware and alert about the constellations. And of course, you move on to exploring that further in your many other books. And then now, of course, a reference to Inferno. Do you think by referring to Inferno, at least in parts, as in the 21st century, is it a sort of a cyclical sense of angst that probably is returning, which began with under Orion? Or do you think that, well, no, it is an entirely exclusive sort of evolution in your themes that you have chosen for this latest book?
Thank you. I must thank the college and Mr. Dr. Ibrahim and all the rest, the English department, for hosting this this function. I'm very grateful. I am grateful. Thank you. And thank you, Sanjukta, for what shall we say, chairing it, mentoring it.
We also have a few readings from the book by our students, and this has been a very, very fascinating conversation. Thank you, Sanjukta ma'am, for, despite all the technical delays, for, carrying this conversation to the entire length, for not shortening it. Thank you very much for giving us a peek into a very different kind of mind of, Keki and Daruwalla. It was almost going back into the past and delving that poetic mind that first started creating and which would create feverishly for the next 51 years. So it was a wonderful conversation. And now I would like a few of our students to read from Under Orion. I'd like to call Fawzia Iftikhar to begin it with a short poem. Fawzia, can we have you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, a little loud, Fawzia. Please go ahead.
Very good evening to all. My poetry. The legs don't move. Sometimes the back turns over like a river changing beds. Sometimes the eye gropes towards an object. Bad instincts. At times the arms thrash around my dreams like windmills. But the legs are withered roots. Memory has slipped up somewhere. For I don't remember what hit me in the spine to turn the legs torpid. Thank you.
Thank you, Fawzia. That was my poetry by Keki and Daruwalla from Under Orion. And next, I would like to call on Rumaisa Mehboob to read from section 5 of Under Orion. Rumaisa, can we have you?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to one and all.
Yes, Rumaisa, please go ahead.
Under Orion, section 5. Can we measure you in digits? Can we measure you in time? Orion, if you slash your wrist, you'll bleed with light. Deciduous light. Eternities of light. And that will be the sign for the scorpion to close in with the star sting of his tail. Upheavals will rock the skies as they rock the earth. When heaving yourself over the eastern rim, you plug the promontory of Pelorum, clawing at the mountain roots and drudging away the silt with your mad tentacular fingers. Orion, it is not you who feed a forest of stars in a forest of fur. It is the eyes that go out. The width of your girdle is light years. The curve of your girdle is time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rumaisa. Thank you very much. Do we have Manish Mukhi here?
Yes, ma'am.
Manish will be reading out Collage 1. Over to you, Manish.
Good evening, everyone. Collage 1. Rock and rollers around Ravi Shankar, scruffy hippies around Maharshi Mahesh, and Beatles around both. And we are thrilled. They have a lot to learn from the raga steel, these bums. It is that same sentiment that Tagore euphoria after the Nobel Prize. At times, we do well in dog shows, since Oppenheimer quoted Bhagavad Gita after the first A bomb, since Allen Ginsberg and the psychedelics wore dhotis and with clanging cymbals chanted cow and Krishna. We stand bowled by Indian culture and Indian hemp. Who says we have done nothing? We have abolished zamindari and liquor and English and driven out the woes from the GB road. What have we forbidden? Whales in front of ice or ice in front of whales? We have inaugurated crematoriums with an unclaimed corpse. A VIP has opened the sluice gates of a drain and given it a name, the drain of hope.
यहाँ बैठना चाहिए.
Someday, here the sun will refuse to light the path for leapers. In India, the left hand is outcast because it cleans the ass. Discussing personal destiny and collective destiny, you turn bitter. My horoscope is only a half truth. Where are inflation and taxes, flow crossing and black marketing written on it? If we had black, Kamu style, and doctors searched for the virus and vaccine, there would be black market and rats. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you for
और
a
हाँ,
beautiful
कुछ फर्क
reading.
पड़ गया.
And our last reading is Death by Burial, read by Jagriti. Jagriti, can we have you? Yes.
Yes. A very good evening, everyone. Death by Burial. For a month past, copper-faced hoodlums had been sneaking in and out of the Baba's grove, smoking ganja. But when bandits struck and raped the daughter-in-law and plucked the earring from
This
the
is-
lacerated lobe, torturing the mother till she pointed out the cash hidden in the haystack, and made off, firing far into the night, they said nothing to the Baba, for he was after all a Baba and was only halfway through his silence fast. 2 months later, during the dark phase of the moon, there was an outcry as if hail had come down on standing harvest. The thieves had only one country-made pistol, looking for all the world, like a crooked man-made penis that couldn't rise to the occasion.
Hmm.
It was a different story now, when after the Millie, the burglars had been cornered. But they were lowbrow, sprung from the feet of Vishnu, growing out like toenails, sprouting like hairs on the metatarsus. A kalwar working country stills, a cobbler playing high, a singhi whose totem was a blue bull horn, through which a singhi tucked the malady from wound, a manihar who made bangles from lac, some wretch working salt out of the earth, and a scavenger who made a living carting unclaimed corpses in his bullock cart. There is nothing much to distinguish one lathi blow from another. The same inverted back, the same arc through the air, the curve consummated on the covering body, and beneath the raining blows, a swarm of limbs, twisting like tentacles. They sewed them up in gunny sacks, alive. But your providence, scurvy till now, could now intervene. Half the village could be Hindu, half Muslim. Enough cause for a riot, with half the village shouting, death by fire, and the other half, death by burial. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jagriti, for that
Thank you.
wonderful reading. We come to an end of a very, very beautiful and a very memorable evening. This event was being screened live on YouTube, and it will be there for all to see. We'll share the link with you once again. And as we come to the end of this program, I would like to call upon our colleague, Dr. Neha Tiwari, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, Neha, ma'am. Neha, ma'am, you are muted.
Oh, thank you, Basudhara. Respected Keki and Daruwalla sir, Sanjukta Dasgupta ma'am, the fans of Keki sir in particular and poetry in general from India and abroad, across literature and beyond, fellow academicians and dear students. This evening has been a very special one, not just because the living legend of Indian literature, Keki sir, who will be turning 85 in few hours from now, has spent very precious time with us. Not just because his creative journey will enter into sixth decade with the passing of this year, but his presence has brought four generations of Indian English poetry lovers together in this virtual platform. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it historical? Isn't this the evening that will remain imprinted in our memories? Well, definitely yes. On behalf of Karim City College and Department of English, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Keki Nasvanji Daruwalla sir for letting us celebrate his 85th years of creative excellence, for consenting to be with us, for blessing us with his kind words, guiding young ones with the art and technique of writing poetry. My sincere thanks to Sanjukta ma'am for always being there for the cause of poetry and for having delightful and meaningful conversation with Keki sir today. Applause and appreciation for all these students who recited Keki sir's poems today with precision and dignity. My heartfelt gratitude to all poetry lovers, especially Anis sir, Joydeep Sarangi sir, Purnaji, for joining us from different places. Your presence has made this program a grand success. I'll also take this opportunity to thank Principal of my college, Dr. Muhammad Riyaz, for providing support and encouragement to organize this program. Dr. Yahya Ibrahim, Head, Department of English, must also be acknowledged for his relentless endeavor to organize program of academic excellence. Dr. Basudhara Roy deserves a special mention, not just for facilitating today's event, but also mentoring students for today's performance. So thank you, Basudhara, for bringing Keki sir to us, chatting, laughing, and reciting his poem. My sincere thanks to my other colleagues as well, Mr. Das and Mr. Saket, also for always being here with us. And once again, I thank all the students, faculty members of Karim City College and of the other institutions for their gracious presence. Before I conclude, my sincere, in fact, our sincere wishes to Keki sir once again. May God bless you with many more years of creativity. May you live long, happy, and healthy. May you keep blessing us ever, forever. Happy birthday, sir, in advance. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neha ma'am. Saket, can we have the brief 1-minute video to, wish Keki sir a happy birthday?
Yes, ma'am. Second, ma'am.
I have again gone off the screen.
Yes, we cannot see you. Can you see us?
I can see you.
Okay, but we hope you will again be visible for the next meeting.
इसे तो बिल निकाल ही दो भाई.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Saket, for putting this together. And thank you very much, Keki Daruwalla sir, for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Sanjukta ma'am, for facilitating this conversation, for carrying this out so wonderfully. And thank you to the wonderful audience who have been with us throughout. Thank you very much. We come to the end of a very, very memorable session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The
Thank
city.
you so much.
Thank you, Keki. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, and happy birthday once again from all of us.
Thank you.
So in advance.
Thank you. Off kare.
Thank you, Urna, for being with us. Thank you very much.